Welcome to the Geekcentric podcast, and welcome to our spoiler-free review for Netflix's The Sea Beast. You can be a hero and still be wrong. Arr, avast ye mateys! My name is Captain Nate, and this is our spoiler-free review for Netflix's The Sea Beast. Special thanks, as always, to the scallywags at Netflix Canada for giving us the opportunity to watch this movie early for review. Before we get started, if you're joining us for the first time, we are Geekcentric, a podcast focusing on the world of movies, TV shows, games, toys, and collectibles, and all things Geekcentric. Joining me for this review is my first mate, the finest first mate of them there 7 seas. He's got no bum, but he's a tall drink of rum. He'll complete his duty without any booty. He's first mate Justin Lawrence. How you doing?
Hi, how are you? You got 2 butt jokes in that
I tried.
one.
I was
the
trying.
lack of posterior that I have. I appreciate it. I am doing well. That was fantastic.
I don't think pirates care about the whole butt thing. I mean, especially with how many of them have wooden legs. You got to imagine they can't have. Yeah, that's not.
There's no.
You're not able to support it,
for sure.
right?
Yeah, exactly.
Have you? I got to ask Justin. Obviously, this movie dealing with sea beasts. Have you ever come across a sea beast before?
No, I can't say that.
None at all, ever?
No. I know you're in Halifax, so you probably have seen some sea beasts just
walking around
the ocean.
I will say, not in Halifax, but I have seen. I've gotten to hug a dolphin before. I think is the closest I've ever been to a sea beast. My mom and I went quite a while ago. We went to Mexico, and we got to swim with some dolphins. That was pretty cool. That's probably the closest I've ever been to a.
I don't know if our audience is going to classify dolphins as sea beasts. Just because they're so intelligent.
Listen, go watch The Simpsons. There's a great episode where the dolphins take over. I think maybe you would classify them as sea beasts at that point. But
sure, I guess.
But before we set sail, let me tell you the tale of this here movie. In an era where terrifying beasts roamed the seas, monster hunters were celebrated as heroes, and none were more beloved than the great Jacob Holland. But when young Maisie Brumble stows away on his fabled ship, he's saddled with an unexpected ally. Together, they embark on an epic journey into the uncharted waters and make history. From Academy Award-winning filmmaker Chris Williams, who's known for Moana, Big Hero 6, and Bolt, The Sea Beast takes us to where the map ends and the true adventure begins. The movie stars Carl Urban, Zeris Angel Hathor, Jared Harris, Marianne Jean-Baptiste, Dan Stevens, and Kathy Burke, and is hitting theaters this Friday, June 24th, and will be available to stream on Netflix shortly after on July 8th. So, Justin, let's dive right into this one. I have to just start things off and say this movie looked fantastic. It was beautifully animated. Right. Shout out to the teams at Netflix Animation Studios. Obviously, there was a lot of sort of hubbub, kerfuffle in the news of late about stuff going on at Netflix Animation Studios, and I'm just happy to see that this movie we still got it. I think Sony Pictures Imageworks, who collabed on the film, also did a really great job, and I think it's just a really good-looking animated picture from a studio that
stunning.
I wasn't expecting that. I mean, they've done animated movies before, but I was not expecting this.
I think it's the collaboration, as you pointed out, that really brought this to fruition. And I think, if anything, if Netflix is going to invest in animation, this might be the best way to do it. And they have some great animated films, right? Like we talked about this extensively on our This Week in Geek episode a while back about the fact that they do actually have a pretty good roster of animated content that does track well with audiences. And I'm with you. I was blown away at visually how stunning this was. It was very painterly in its color schemes. It is about pirates and the sea, so there's that coastal vibe to it, but there was also a real great sense of attention to architecture and design, and you could see that there was attention given to kind of building this world through its animated look. And I really do appreciate that. And I agree with you. It was absolutely stunning to just be so immersed in some of these colors.
Yeah, you could like smell like the sea breeze air. I think even just seeing like the salt in the air like over the ocean, I thought was really good. And maybe you want to go back and check out some of the other stuff like Over the Moon and The Willoughbys is another couple of animated films that were done by Netflix Animation Studios. I have to say the character design reminded me a lot of Disney Studios animation, something you'd find in Moana, Frozen. There's like characters that I thought were literally just pulled from Frozen. I think the creature design looked very DreamWorks to me, and I don't think either of those things, I don't think that's a bad thing. I mean, if anything, it just proves that Netflix Animation Studios can hold their own against these animation powerhouses, and I think that's something to be celebrated. I feel like there's some wiggle room to be had where we can, similar to like we've been talking about with Sony Animation, where they've really sort of nestled into their own sort of style. I think we could find that going forward, but at least we know that they've got the chops to make some really great looking characters.
I think it's a matter of not trying to make your thing look like Disney or Pixar, but just embrace the fact that those already exist.
Yeah.
They already have their own look. So how are you going to take what they're doing and just do it in your own way? And like you're pointing out, like the idea that the look and feel of the character design was very Disney, right? Like Jacob reminded me of
Flynn Rider, dude.
Escaping me.
Flynn Rider. He's a thick Flynn Rider is what he is. Yeah.
From Tangled,
From
right?
Tangled, yeah.
Yeah, and I also thought of the blonde-haired dude in Frozen. That's who I was thinking of.
Okay, yes. Frick, yeah, what's his name? Christoph, I think is who you're thinking of. Christoph.
Yes,
but it's funny.
Exactly.
This film's director was actually in Frozen, and he's worked for Disney in the past, like we said. But he played Oaken, who I'm pretty sure, if I'm not mistaken, he's the guy that goes hoo hoo or like hi hoo or whatever he says. So that's pretty hi there. It's a pretty cool nod there. I think this cast is also really great in this movie. I think they all feel like a natural fit for their characters. Maisie is instantly likable. You kind of fall in love with her attitude right away. She's full of vinegar, as Captain Crow in this movie says. I think Zeris Angel Hathor, who hasn't really been in the industry for too terribly long. I mean, she's a little kid, but she hasn't been in this industry for too long, did an excellent job voicing her alongside Carl Urban, which for me was a bit of a trip coming off of watching him in The Boys and now seeing him in this family film. But like, again, he's perfect because he's like this rugged, rough pirate monster hunter. And I don't know, I really enjoyed him and her, sort of their chemistry throughout the entire movie.
I think Carl Urban's voice was perfect for Jacob. I think he balances his confidence as an adventurer with his parental instincts, which is, like you're pointing out, is very Butcher. But Billy Butcher is the extreme. I feel like he just brings himself to that character in probably what is a more honest way. Macy was fantastic. I think she's the heart of this movie. Mm-hmm. She's so endearing, so charming. You're right. You fall in love with her right off the bat. Like the first scene is with her, right? And it's so captivating. Jared Harris,
yes,
as
right,
the captain. I loved how manic he became throughout this movie. That being said, like the cast in this movie is they commit. There's there's actual level of acting through the voice.
Absolutely.
Like even Macy has a standout moment towards the end that's just so captivating. Just the performance of it, like the commitment to it. So it's handled really, really well.
It's crazy to Jared Harris. I think most recently I've seen him in Foundation, where he plays Hari Seldon or Harry Seldon, and he's like he's just so not this character of Captain Crow. Like it's such a delight to see him in a role that is so different, and the character looks so physically different than him. Mm-hmm. And I think that's really, really fun when a voice actor can deliver such a believable performance in the body of a character that is completely not them is awesome. And he was so captivating. And I thought from the beginning, he was, again, he's just this sort of mentor type character that we start to see sort of lose his way a little bit, and I really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He gets crazy, he gets obsessed, and I think you're absolutely right that level of commitment that Jared Harris brought, but Zeres Angel Hathor, with her portrayal of Macy, it was also that same level. So on the opposite ends here of the character dynamic, as protagonist, antagonist, and if you will, I think they both really committed to it. I think the story is so it's so interesting. They've layered in aspects that relate back to our own world.
I do want to get into the story in a little bit, as it is something that for me, it didn't quite fully hit. But before I do, before we start talking about some of that stuff, I wanted to mention, I think the music by Mark Mancina, who also did the music for Moana, was fantastic. I think, you've got this like pirate adventure music with like the Hans Zimmer-esque strings, and like you got a mix of like tribal jungle sound, which he's known for his work on Tarzan. And I really enjoyed the music. It just felt perfect for the movie. I will say the comedy isn't the strongest. I think that's it's a little far and few between from what it's a little more slapstick, and I think that's what it's gonna get more chuckles from like kids, which is awesome. I mean, obviously this is a family movie, especially with the character of Blue, who's like this squishy, goopy, derpy-eyed companion for Maisie. He's kind of like he reminds me of like the chicken from Moana. Or even like Pua, if you mix those two characters together, that's kind of what we get here.
Hey. He's a little like Hey, but I would almost compare him to the pug from Mitchell's versus the Machine.
Yes. Okay. Yeah, that works too.
And he's super adorable. I loved him. I thought he was great, and he was actually the charming comedic side. I'm kind of glad that the movie didn't have like a ton of comedy.
Sure.
When it did lean into the comedy, it was very slapstick comedy.
I'm not gonna lie, like slapstick doesn't do it as much for me, and I'm sure again with the movie being pointed towards a younger audience, it does. But I thought there are some moments though where Jacob straight up picks up Blue and chucks him across the forest, and I was like, that actually got a bit of a chuckle from me. So I thought that was pretty cool. I think honestly, if this movie was made by Disney, we would be seeing a ton of Blue plushies all over the park. You'd have the little magnetic Blue that you put on your shoulders and stuff like that, because he's just a little cute, squishy little character. I think going into the story, I just wanted to say, like, I think the only thing I didn't fully jive with, as great as the movie looks, as great as its voice cast is, I didn't find the story to be too compelling in the fact that it sort of limits its audience a bit too much. And I found its message, which in some ways is very similar to Moana, it just wasn't hammered home enough for it to live up to the recent animated movies we've gotten from Chris Williams. And I think there's a key ingredient that we've gotten used to from our animated studio. We're kind of spoiled with movies from DreamWorks, Disney, and Pixar, and Sony now, in the fact that a lot of these movies will create a broader sort of message that can reach out and connect with a larger group of people. And I don't think this movie really gets to what it's trying to say. It kind of gets distracted by the pirate adventure story, which, again, it's perfectly fine for a family fun Netflix animated movie. But I'd love to see them really hit a strong message that connects with a broader audience, especially now that they've proven themselves with the visuals. I think it kind of just felt like a part of this experience for me of going into this animated movie that looks so good was missing. That's the only thing for me. Sure. Is I didn't fully connect with it, and I think it just felt a little light. And again, that's not a terrible thing, but I'm just used to more from my animated movies these days.
For sure. I think it actually has a really compelling story about diversity and equality. First off, one thing I really love is the look of the characters from a diversity standpoint. Mm-hmm. There is a very mixed diversity of people featured throughout, from on the ship to the townsfolk to
totally.
Everywhere that you look, right? So background characters and foreground characters, they all represent a more accurate world that we live in and aren't just, for lack of better words, white.
Totally.
That being said, I think the theme of using the sea beasts, and there's an underlining theme here that I think does delve into a sense of diversity, or it's really an allegory for racism, I feel like, in some aspects. And it tells the story of racism in a different time and in a different world. Core value in a lot of these animated movies that we see is to understand the person next to you and not to necessarily just hate them or because they're different. More or less, those are issues that are prevalent in our society right now to a certain degree, where people are being judged based on the way they look and who they are and whatever, right? So I think in a way that the story kind of, maybe it doesn't hit it home, but I think it's cleverly playing with it as a way to kind of talk about something that's a bit bigger. It might not have necessarily leaned into it, but
right.
So,
I
really,
felt it more on the lines of nature and kind of how we're affecting the planet, and sort of how, we've kind of unfortunately destroyed our own world, and how that's not necessarily the faults of the these sea beasts. And I think that, to me, that was more the sort of underlying message that I saw. And I'm I think it's you're proving my point wrong here, where you're kind of getting a little something different out of it, which is cool. I guess it does kind of have a bit of a broader message, but it just didn't fully hit that for me. It was a little too surface level.
I think it really stems from, even just, again, as I began this thought process, is the level of diversity that's featured among the cast of people.
Totally.
Juxtapose that to these feared monsters that nobody understands, right? It kind of does speak to the idea of we fear what we don't know.
Correct.
We don't fully understand what is told to us in
Right.
a way. And that very much speaks to this generation, telling a story to this generation that is understand those next to you rather than passing judgment and assuming. Understand the person next to you. Don't go by a book, if you will, right? To a certain degree. So I don't know. I feel like there's pretty obvious touch points throughout the movie that kind of speak to that. Even just their journey and the discovery of the sea beast, rather. To see that, to just understand a little bit more. It is a little long, though. I will say that. I do think that could have been tightened and shortened up a little bit, but I can see what they were trying to do. They did the long draw on really trying to help solidify Macy and Jacob's relationships.
Totally. Yeah, I totally get that. I just think that for the animated movies that I'm used to seeing these days, I feel like those messages are clearer, and I didn't fully see that as much.
That's fair.
And again, it's totally fine because it's a Netflix animated movie, but I think as they've been stepping it up, I think they could step it up even further, and that's kind of what I hope to see. Justin, let's get to our final thoughts here, which we're going to be rating on the scales of 1 to 5 sea beasts.
Yeah, I think, as I was saying, I'm very surprised. I was very surprised by this movie from both a visual and narrative standpoint. As we were saying, well, I don't think we actually mentioned this, but I think we said it offline. But it has a lot of similarities to How to Train Your Dragon, but with sea monsters, and even the look of the sea monster Red looks very toothless, if you will, which is probably why this movie got made. But there was an actual investment here on all parties. There was an honest collaboration from Netflix, from the Sony animation team, from everyone who kind of took part. And you can see that, you can feel that. The movie deals with themes that are very familiar to the animated genre, instilling values and morals that I think audiences of all ages can really take away from, probably on different levels. It just depends on how they're looking at it, right? As we were just talking about before. And I think those themes really do stem from family and beliefs and understanding one another based on differences, and the importance of taking a stance to do what you know is right. At its core, the story really does feel like, as I was mentioning, a bit of an allegory for racism, and it's just cleverly telling its story in a different time and in a different world. The precious nature of Macy, steeped in a passion of adventure and being a part of the stories that she reads, feels entirely relatable and incredibly charming, and just so connected in terms of that being a voice of change and understanding how things can be moved forward. I honestly adored her. She represents the change that is possible if you spend the time to listen and ask the right questions. So I think the movie is really held together by the core characters. You have Carl Urban, who very much just plays a Carl Urban role, he's at his best, and I think that, again, as I was saying, it's not Billy Butcher. It's very much the opposite end of that with similar traits. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. Jared Harris was fantastic. We talked about the look and feel. The music was unbelievable. It had the right tones of that pirate adventure with that sort of tribal and that unknown and that that adventure, that sort of Indiana Jones style. It all comes together, and it really does work. And I feel like this movie would work really, really well in theaters, given everything that we've talked about from the visuals and just the look and feel. And if you do get a chance to see it at the Scotiabank Theatre in Toronto or Cineplex International Village in Vancouver, I really think it's going to be worth it, because this movie does really mix those worlds. And I think that this is what this movie does really well, is it takes everything that we know and love from Disney, from Sony, from DreamWorks, and puts it in this melting pot and tells its story in its own way, that I think is relatable to a degree, depending on how you look at it. So I'm going to give this movie a 4 out of 5.
All righty. Okay. You liked it. That's good. I mean, again, I think
I did. I was surprised by it.
Seriously, we need to be supporting these studios that are again, we talked about it on our This Week in Geek episodes around some of the troubles with Netflix animation, and I think all the support and love that we can give them. Definitely give this movie a watch. I think overall it's a fun sort of adventure movie with visuals that, again, will rival tenured studios, but it just, unlike recent stories from Chris Williams, it just doesn't I don't think it has the narrative chops to leave a message that will really connect with people, or kind of go above that surface level for a lot of people. I think if you have kids, if you're a fan of animation, there's still a really good time to be had here, and I don't think the movie's bad. I just don't think it nails the storytelling quite as much as it does the visuals. And again, as I said, these days we're kind of spoiled with animation projects that do both more often than not. So for Netflix's Sea Beasts, I'm going to give it a 3.5 Sea Beast scales out of 5. Well, that is it. We hope you enjoyed this spoiler-free review for Netflix's The Sea Beast. And if you did, make sure to subscribe to us wherever you like to listen to podcasts. And if you want to write into the show with your thoughts on the movie or any of the content we cover, well, Justin, can you tell these lily-livered landlubbers the coordinates that they can send their notes in a bottle?
Yar, matey. They can reach us at wearegeekcentric@gmail.com. That's wearegeekcentric@gmail.com. Or you can send a bird our way at Twitter at GeekcentricYT, or on Instagram. I don't know what you'd use Instagram in the pirate days for, but we're at We Are Geekcentric.
Yeah. Keep in mind, we also have a ton of other great episodes covering the latest in movies, TV shows, and games, including our spoiler-free review for Disney and Pixar's Lightyear, as well as our interviews with Lightyear director Angus MacLean, producer Galen Sussman, and composer Michael Giacchino up right now, as well as our interview with Miss Marvel directors Adil and Bilal, who directed episodes 1 and 6 of that show. We also have our spoiler-free review for another Netflix movie, The Man from Toronto, out right now that you can check out and see what we thought of that one as well. We also have yet another Watch Club has now wrapped up with our finale for Obi-Wan Kenobi, which I'm not going to spoil our thoughts on this podcast, but just definitely check it out to hear our thoughts on that finale. And we were so blessed to have two iconic, incredible Canadians join us for an interview from Obi-Wan Kenobi. We had the show's director and executive producer, Deborah Chow, as well as Anakin Skywalker himself, Hayden Christensen, on the Geekcentric podcast, where, Justin, I got to say, you did an excellent job asking some wonderful questions. It was fantastic.
I was so nervous, bro. I honestly, to be able to talk to anyone who's making Star Wars content. Yeah, it's a dream come true.
Let alone Deborah Chow and Anakin Skywalker, like unreal.
And
dude.
Anakin Skywalker, my God,
unreal. Definitely go check out those episodes and make sure to you can check that out on podcast services as well as on YouTube as well. You can check that out there. See put some faces to the voices. And finally, we also have our weekly This Week in Geek episodes every single Wednesday. We've been off, obviously, super busy the past couple of weeks, but we do have our, if you're a fan of Star Wars, Justin, Darcy, and I discuss the incredible reveals at Star Wars Celebration, and we even talk about trailers for stuff that hasn't even come out yet. So definitely check out that episode if you're a Star Wars fan. Go give all those episodes a listen and leave a 5-star review if you don't mind. Justin, let's set sail yet again. Thank you so much for joining me for this review. And as we say, love yar.
Peace, yar.